David Detata, Managing Director of Strategic Energy Resources, ASX ticker SER. We are a specialised undercover explorer and project generator focused on the discovery of a major copper gold deposit in Queensland, down under in Australia.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, and welcome. Like, we've not met or spoken before, so I just want to maybe start off by trying to understand a little bit about you. Where have you worked before? What have you done, and how's that relevant to what you're doing today?
Yeah, my background is in analytical chemistry. I actually spent nearly first 20 years of my career as a forensic scientist, and then the last 5 years of that career I transitioned to more of an R&D focus. So within forensic science, it's all about developing an hypothesis and then testing it. And from around 2019, I made the transition into mineral exploration through some connections here in Western Australia in Perth. Everyone in Perth is either knows someone or works in an exploration or a minerals company. So it didn't take long to find my feet in strategic energy resources. And look, that really is the difference in what I bring to the company, in that we see each one of our individual copper projects as its own research entity. And we're employing that hypothesis testing approach to it. We're able to quickly go from what might be a prospective region down to a prospective target and then testing it. Then also crucially making that decision, did the hypothesis step up and should stack up, or should we move on, and what is next? So it's kind of been a change for a focus of the company to have a particular focus on copper, but then a strategic approach to how we go about really looking at every one of our targets through a lens of, does the overall reason for being here stack up? And does the target stack up? Right,
okay. So Prospect Generator, I had a great conversation with two North American companies using the same model. A lot to like in that. Maybe talk about maybe a little bit more about the kind of team that you've wrapped around you as well to kind of support that. Because obviously, you have certain skills, but you'll need to be able to assess the assets that you've picked up or deciding to move forward with. So who's helping you?
You look at board level, Executive Chairman Stuart Reckner. He's actually on the board of Kingston Resources, which has gone from being an exploration company right through to reducing assets. So plenty of experience from that side of the fence in identifying a project and then taking it into commercial reality and actually making money out of it, which is the game for everyone in mineral exploration. And on the other side, Anne McIntosh, worked capital markets and finance, started really with Echo Resources and was involved in the takeover there. So plenty of interest and experience in working in public companies and recognising value at an early stage and then bringing that through to actually delivering some value for shareholders, which is what the game is.
Right, okay. So you've got, how many projects have you got in the portfolio at the moment?
We're running 4 major copper projects in Queensland.
Right, okay. Small company, presumably a balance sheet of a certain size. You need to be really efficient about how you kind of move things forward, and I guess there's a lot to it. One, can you tell me about the kind of selection process, and how many projects do you need to look at before you kind of settle on something like that? And whether or not it's is it a drill to kill, or is it a bit earlier stage than that?
Oh, a combination of both. Looking at the genesis of the projects, those 4 projects, the first one, the Kenobi Gold Project in Queensland, is actually a joint venture with Fortescue. So as part of that, yes, it is expensive, but we're actually not paying the bills. And earlier this year, they signed off on a $3 million budget to drill 4 outstanding priority targets over the next 12 months. And as an operator, we collect the fee, and also all of our salaries are paid. So the ultimate aim for us is to have a project of size and magnitude that attracts a major to then take that funding issue off the table. So we can park that project in this discussion because we're not actually paying for it, but the upside will come with any drilling success over the next 12 months.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's use that as a case study. We'll get onto the other projects in a second, right? So you have an asset and you go and you're brave enough as a small company to go and speak to someone like Fortescue and say, right, hey, this may interest you. Are you speaking from a position of strength, weakness? Are you just desperate to kind of get any kind of deal done to kind of cover, I say, G&A, salaries, etc.? I mean, how do you approach something like that?
Well, I don't think Fortescue are in the favour of doing anyone else any benefit. So for us, look, all 4 projects, there's a commonality between them. They were either held by a major and then dropped because of a change of strategy or a change of attention, or they're now in a joint venture with a major. So that's the commonality between them. The majors recognise that a large economic deposit has to sit on a structure that can bear fruit. And all of the projects can be traced back along their major lithospheric fault or whatever it is, back to a deposit that is actually in operation or was in operation. So the Kenobi project, it hit 140 kilometres south, it hit Ernest Henry. So for FMG, we're in the right postcode to begin with. We're on the same structure. They know there's mineralisation. So the logical step is, does the ground have the capacity to find an Ernest Henry 2.0, which is the size of the project that they're after? So in area selection for FMG, they looked at who's holding the right ground in the right postcode. That was us. And then through discussions back and forth over really what was an 18-month period, then the due diligence was done on us as a company. Are we doing the right things to promote this strategy? Are we looking at the company? Is the company, looking at the project in the right way? What tools are we using to explore? And then can we work together? So the due diligence on ground selection is one thing, but then having the company, FMG, doing due diligence on us gives us that level of confidence that we can work together, because now we're approaching the end of the third year of it. We're going to be drilling this year and into next year. They need to be able to look at us and say, in the hands, we're giving you guys $3 million in the next 12 months. Are you going to do it, this project justice? Are you going to spend this money wisely, knowing that the price is at the end of it? So convincing them was a matter of being in the postcode to start with, and then it's a corporate discussion from that point on.
Well, let's talk about the corporate discussion. And like I say, I do like to use get into the detail on one of these, because it just shows your thinking and your approach. So clearly you are not there. Well, I guess you could argue maybe you're their outsourced exploration team in a way, but it's got to be more than that in terms of creating value for your shareholders. So can we talk about this, how you structure and negotiate these deals? Clearly there's a management fee. What does that look like, and was it involved? And more importantly, what's the rest of the terms in the agreement look like?
So there is a 5% management fee across the total exploration spend. At the time, we were around that now, you're a $4 or $5 million market cap company, and one of the headwinds in the negotiation is you're dealing with a company that's 10,000 times your size with $50 billion market cap. So the hesitation, it comes out, well, we don't want to spend more on a project than what your company's actually worth. But at the end, we don't want to hold the project if there's nothing there. So what we did is we landed on a middle ground. So the $8 million to spend over 6 years, where we inserted a drilling metric, because both parties understand that unless you hit a target undercover, that you're wasting your money. So as I said, there's $3 million that's coming up now. We'll take it over the first pass, which is the 50% hurdle, purely on the fact that they have to drill the number of holes, because we know in order to find a discovery, you have to drill it, but in order for our shareholders to retain some interest and upside, you actually have to put out those results. So both parties were happy, and that's how we landed on it. Two-stage deal, 50% and then up to 80%, but we included the drilling metrics. And that drilling metrics, we're dealing with 800 to 1,000 metre holes. The drilling metric doesn't include the cover. So for instance, if we drill an 800 metre hole, the first 400 metres doesn't count. It's the 400 at the bottom that counts. And that number has to add up. 400 in the first hole and say 500 in the second. We're going to get to 3,000 before we get anywhere. So we've made sure from the beginning that we have to test targets and we have to have an outcome so that our shareholders can be satisfied that we're getting value out of the transaction.
Right, and ultimately you need to be able to show the market what they should be valuing as well, because Fortescue, they want something very different from you, especially at this early stage for you guys. So you're 3 years into this deal. Is this some sort of rolling, target-driven agreement, or is this you just sit down at the end of each year and say, look, okay, are we moving forward or not moving forward? How's the relationship work?
Well, in the first 6 months, we drilled 3 holes, so 3,000 plus metres across 3 targets. The second year was a step back, and based on the drill holes information that we got, we did a period of geophysics. So we've collected thousands of extra gravity surveys across it. We've just run an MT survey across numerous new targets. Both parties are new to exploring undercover. You'll note that Fortescue is an iron ore company. They dig and ship. Copper is relatively new to them, but exploring undercover is new to both parties. So there's some techniques there, some trial and error that's going back and forth, new techniques to try and best target and eliminate the 20 plus targets we might want to drill down to justifiable ones that we could do in the next period. So we have to work collaboratively on this. We, as a company, SER, has been doing undercover explorer, I would argue, longer than FMG has. So we bring a certain technique and style towards it, and relationships with other research organisations that have then helped both parties with the targeting that will allow us to get on ground and do some drilling this year.
Right, but getting to this kind of valuation, because I think you've got to help your shareholders, anyone looking at these kind of, this prospect generator model, is to understand where's the kind of inflection points. What needs to happen for people to kind of give you credit. One, in terms of being able to move the project along and keep that money flowing, or just maybe make a discovery which sees a pop in the share price and allows you to raise some equity out there. So how do you kind of manage the kind of financial and valuation component of your business model?
Yeah, well, I think that any significant intersection of copper in this year's drill program at Kenobi is going to make the share price pop for SER. That's no doubt. And then whether retention is big enough for a Fortescue, or if it's not. I mean, anything less than a tier one really opens up opportunities for us, for them to walk away and us carry the mantle from there. This is the absolute best case scenario for everyone, is if we land on something the size of Anesthetic 2.0, in which case there's a discussion to have, I'm sure, between Fortescue and us about where that all finishes up, and there's metrics in the agreement, but anything less. As I said, there's plenty of copper deposits out there that are smaller.
But okay, so you got two tracks there. One is you make a discovery and they want to kind of move forward with you. Is that just a case they continue to pay some sort of management fee, or is there sort of free carry to a certain point? And or the other track being, well, if you don't make a discovery, do they hand the whole thing back to you? Can you just talk to those?
Yeah, that's right. The discovery doesn't happen, it comes back to us, and that'll be
100%.
Yeah, that'll be in the end a lot of expenditure that we would never have been able to do in testing these targets. And the flip side, obviously, they get to the first hurdle, which is the 50%, and then they have to drill 3,000 metres again to get to the second stage hurdle. And from that point, we'll know whether or not there's anything serious enough, and we can either stay in the game through a standard dilution process, or, fingers crossed to take us out.
Well, yeah, always. But again, just want to be clear, because I want to see how hard or how good you are at the negotiation. But so if they kind of do the earn into the 50%, but then subsequently then walk away, do you get 100% back, or they hold on and carry 50%?
Yeah, we'll get it back.
You get it back. Okay, just want to be clear on that one. Okay, so we understand the process now and how you think about things. With regards to the other assets in the portfolio, have you got partners on those?
No, we haven't got partners on those. There's a bit earlier stage of the other projects, the Isa North project. So Isa North, I'll just quickly go through. The Isa North is a copper gold project, ex-Newcrest. Bulimba Gold project is again an ex-Newcrest project. It's strictly gold. All these are in Queensland. And probably the most significant for us, which took us from an explorer looking for an intercept to an explorer with that intercept, is recently an acquisition of the Diamantina project from Anglo American just earlier this year. And that really catapulted us from looking for that intersect for us then to be able to put our hand on heart and say, well, there's definitely copper there. There's definitely, in this case, 161 metres of 0.4. There's more to look for. We've advanced now to that next step, and now we can look at looking for more intercepts and really taking our approach to exploration to this project when they were quite happy to walk away from it.
Let's talk about that. Obviously, Anglo American have done a fair bit of work on that. There's a lot of historical spend, presumably, there's some holes in the ground. So how are you reprocessing their kind of their work?
Well, they've spent north of $30 million on the project, and then they narrowed it down to the two tenements that we've picked up as part of the project, and we've then since added some tenements in and around it. The expend on those two projects was $20 million, and at the time that they were doing the drilling in 2019 and 2020, they were running diamond drill programs, they were running coil tube programs, they had MT surveys, gravity surveys running, whole heap down, whole EM being run. They really threw everything at it. But then it quickly turned in 2020 when this was at the time of COVID, where really this was the only project that Anglo American could work on because of the restrictions. And then they got to the rationalisation, well, we've spent all this money, we now sit with a project and we've got other competing projects to work with. And subsequently we see the Anglo-American and Teck, Anglo-American BHP. So for them, exploration doesn't add any value on the bottom line, it takes away from it. So they were going through a period of rationalisation themselves. And we found ourselves in March having a relationship with Anglo-American and the team for really 3 years, that they approached us. And they said, we have this project, no one knows anything about it. We see how you guys operate. We like the style. We would hope that you guys see some value in this project. Would you like to take a look at it? And we were one of what we think is very few people in the room at that time back in March, and through the due diligence period, where we got to see what the rest of the world had never seen, and that was what they'd been doing south of Cloncurry. And that's this $20 million spent. And I suppose for us, we were able to then get our hands on the project for quite a nice deal. But it provides us with an opportunity and a head start on what might be, if we were to go into that area based on what was known already, would be just too untenable for a company of our size.
Right, and how much work, and as I presume this is all in-house work as well, how much work's been done in terms of identifying kind of pathfinder geochem across the work that, again, Anglo's done, and are there any kind of halos that you can sort of vector in off of for your drilling? Because you're planning a sort of, how many holes are you going to be doing?
Yeah, we're planning up to 4 holes. So there's
four holes, right?
Yeah, there's 2 parts to that story. As part of the bid process, we put forward an exploration plan because we thought in order for us to show that we are bona fide in taking on this project, this is what we would do based on the due diligence that we've done and the data that's related. And working with the team, they said that that's fantastic, we appreciate it. Here's what we would have done, and we then landed in the middle. Let's forget the people or the team that was involved in exploration at Diamantina. It wasn't their choice to give it away. Give it away to sell it. They were very much invested in the project, so they had budgets to set aside, and they had an exploration program moving forward. And the decision to exit was made, and we now inherited that. So to further back onto that, there were Anglo-American themselves had already set up a number of R&D projects and streams, and entered into those as well, which then we get access to as well. So they're very much, it's a live project, and they just were moved away from it. The exploration team are where to take out that mantle. So there's a lot of geophysics that was collected and not interpreted and not processed. And then for us, including an MT survey, that is the opportunity. Not just following up on the holes that were drilled and the gaps in between for the mineralisation, but the geophysical data sets that sit there yet to be interpreted or even yet to be collected.
Okay, because if you look at the kind of historic data, I think your material suggests that over Elizabeth Springs East, the kind of copper, gold, iron ratios are variable. So are you kind of reading anything into that in terms of the fluid evolution, the redox conditions, that sort of thing? I mean, what's the interpretation?
Well, yeah, absolutely. From first look, there's multiple mineralisation events happening. What we're seeing in 500 metres away from DTD 002 to a core tube, there's actually 500 metres, but there's nickel in one intercept and there's of note, 0.6, and there's nothing in the other one. So there's clearly a number of mineralisation events that are happening even within 500 metres. What doesn't stack up is the collection of geophysical data, because without putting a hole in it, you won't be able to separate the two. And when we have a look at that, it's actually quite sparse, including magnetics out to 400 metres. So those sort of data sets weren't used to then target what was happening underneath. Have a look at some of the other drill holes. There's some core tube drilling. So they had the Minex CRC bring the core tube rig down, which essentially goes through cover and then tags basement. And some of the holes there intercepted copper numbers from the moment you hit basement of significance, but they were never followed up. And what we're trying to understand is the pattern. I mean, they're trying to tag basement across this massive area. Elizabeth Street East, 4 by 2 kilometres. You really need better sensing at the top, at the absolute, where you can walk to understand what's happening rather than going through a tag in the basement. So for us, there's other opportunities involved in that.
Okay, so you, I guess, looking at the chargeability versus conductivity and trying to better understand what the geophysics is telling you. But what about when you kind of come to with these 4 holes that you're gonna drill? You're gonna need to differentiate between magnetite and hematite domination in this alteration system. So how are you planning to do that?
Well, the 4 holes as we currently look at doing it are, one will be following up on the intersection that was drilled by Anglo-American that had 161 metres, 0.4, because that obviously needs to follow up. It has got a greater section of 0.6 at 25.6% copper. So there's a high grade band in there. And then what we hope to do prior to doing that is a magnetic survey of tighter spacings to try and understand what's happening at surface and then work out directions from there. Mentioned that there's some core tube rigging drilling, as I said, top of the basement's hitting 0.5 copper for 6.5 metres. Now, does that get better at depth? The only way to find out is to put a hole under that. And then I mentioned the MT survey that's collected but hasn't been processed. That actually sits between Elizabeth Springs East and Elizabeth Springs South. There's quite a large area in there where an MT survey was run and an anomaly was identified, hasn't been processed, but for us, that's the fourth hole, following up on that one there in between. And that's really, for us, the opportunity, because we are away from mineralisation that's been tagged, that we're in a different area. But then how they're all related, that's yet to play out.
So, what do you say? Is this? Do you think this is like pure IOCG territory, or is it any kind of skarn related or hybrid IOCG skarn related mineralisation as well?
We think it's IOCG related from what we've seen so far, yeah. Now, I'll premise that by saying the transaction itself hasn't been finalised. We still haven't paid the consideration yet. It's moving through. Well, the consideration's in two parts, and there's a cash and a scrip component, so all up at 600K in value. Half of that is two milestones, half cash, half shares. So the first consideration is 150 cash and then 150 in shares at what is 1 cent, which is above our current share price trading. So then what coming with that is deed of assignments for native title, but then custody of the core. And then we can start actually pouring our heads over the core and double checking all the work that's been done on their group and then using that to help us target. So we're very early in the stage of taking ownership of this project. But as I said, we chose to put forward an exploration program to show the Anglo-American what we would do when we got on ground.
Okay. Well, let's stick away from the technical. If we come back and chat again, we can maybe get into the weeds a little bit more. I think it's really important for companies like you to explain why this model of partnering works, in the sense of, like, if you were raising equity to get after these, let's put early stage projects which have a higher chance of failure, statistics, you don't want to be using your shareholders' money. You want to be using partner money and getting after this. So when, I think I asked earlier, the inflection point has got to come where you start advancing projects far enough along the line where they can see a monetization event, or you can see a monetization event. What does that look like for you? Do you need to hang around until someone builds this thing?
No, certainly the drill hole will do the benefit for us. If we look at, as I said, the portfolio projects, so Bulimba Gold Project, we use that as another example. That's ex-Newcrest ground up near Charters Towers and in northeast Queensland. For us there, we're targeting intrusion-related gold. The desktop work and the geophysical work is expensive. Of course it will be, but in the end, we're picking up a project for zero. And so if we can then push forward the geophysics to the point that it's drill ready, or to the point where we can put the first two holes to try and proof of concept, then attract a partner, or if we were lucky enough to find a mineralised intersect in our first drilling, already we're at that point. It's the point where you move along, you test multiple holes, and then you recognise that you are in the right location. The number of targets is well beyond your budget, but the proof of concept is there. And that's the sweet spot for us in this project generator phase. And that's exactly what Kenobi was. This is 2016, we first picked up the first part of that project. And then we fast forward to 2023, a lot of holes have been drilled in that project, proof of concept has been made, but we can't take it any further. And we'd like to pitch a project to a major company at that point where we say we haven't found the mineralised intercept, but what we've got, as again, case point in Kenobi, what we've got is everything that stacks up towards it. Can you see how and why we got to this point? And that's the point, that's the sweet spot. We'd love to make a discovery without having a partner involved, but we've got to recognise as juniors, you're right, there's only so much time and investment a shareholder's going to take in you saying, oh, we're going to go back again. And instead, I suppose the difference with other juniors or some of the market more facing companies is they'll say, well, let's change commodity, or let's change to a different jurisdiction. Well, we recognise that skill base is in Australia, and there's plenty of for the next major mineral discovery undercover in Queensland. We want to be the one company that makes that next. Okay,
interesting. There's one question I did mean to ask you at the beginning, and I know I said we're kind of stick with the kind of high level stuff, but at ISA North, you're using machine learning, and I've seen all sorts of versions of this. It's not necessarily pure AI, but I think the output there suggests that you've got a high probability score for some hydrothermal magnetite at Nadu East. Is that right? Can you tell us about how do you validate the kind of data set that kind of went into that allow it to kind of output a kind of high probability score?
Yeah, I can't take all the credit for this one.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, we was part of another grant we got through the Queensland government was to assist our partner, the Caldera Analytics, who works as a consultant for the company, to validate and develop a machine learning model. What actually the model is about is taking base data sets from the government, so magnetic data sets across the whole of Queensland, in particular Mount Isa region, and they're taking company data, putting it all together, and then plotting over the top mineral occurrences, mineral deposits, and then from there using that learning data set to then impinge on the new data that we collected for grav and magnetics at Nadu, and using a test case as Ernest Henry, everyone's looking for that, as the score, as the ranking, and then based on that, trying to use that as a probability for us to then screen the number of targets we've got. If we get across across the greater Isa North project, there's 5,000 metres of drilling. Newcrest had got to the point that exhaustion kicked in. They were unable to get landholder access to the Nadu area, which is the area we're drilling right now, because of a frustration with an agreement with the landholder. We took the project on. We managed to secure a landholder. We knew what they were doing next. They were drilling in 6 holes across that area. For us, 6 holes is pretty expensive for a junior. We're not going to repeat the same process. So how do we rank these 6 holes? And for us, another level on top of that was getting this machine learning that we, as I said, the Queensland government had also invested in, with us, and using that to rank those targets. And that's how we ended up on these 2 targets, Nadu East and Nadu West.
Obviously, the more data you can sort of layer on top of each other, the better it is before we start the drilling. Because, like I say, it's expensive. Is there any further work that you're going to be doing? I don't know. What you think might help
For ranking the targets, or for
exactly.
Across the whole project area itself, we for some collaborations we have with the University of Tasmania and the Codes Group. So that's taking a lot of the drill core samples of the existing drilling that was done by Newcrest, and further interpreting that and feeding some of the SEM work that was taken out of that into our model as well. Remember that if you head south along what is that fault, the Gunpowder Fault, you end up with true north copper, you end up with a number of deposits along that area, 29 metals, gunpowder deposits. There's mineralisation on that fault, and as it heads undercover, we want to make sure that we're using the best target rationality. So machine learning is one part of it, more data out of the existing drilling is the next part of it. But if anyone can crack the code on determining whether or not a magnetic and a gravity target has mineralisation before you drill it, then everyone would be a screaming success. So we're trying to take as many layers as we can to give us a little bit more confidence in doing it. Because as I said, Newcrest went in there, they drilled 5,000 metres, didn't find anything of significance. We want to be different.
Right, Gunpowder Fault System, Northern Extension, let's go. Let's find it. Well, I think it's kind of interesting. I do love the kind of prospect generator type model, and it will be quite nice if and when you can get to a point where you can actually explore your own properties as well. I think you probably get a bit more credit there. I think it's a bit more understood. Look, appreciate your time today. Stay in touch. Let us know how you get on.
Absolutely. Yeah. As I said, we're drilling underway right now at Isa North. 2 targets that we are drilling currently. And then we'll move straight from there to Kenobi, drill that project. And for us, the only thing that moves the needle is drilling success. And we are determined to keep drilling, whether it's our own money or whether or not it's finding a partner to help us put as many holes as we can in the ground.
Right. Okay. Appreciate your time today. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Ciao.